Project Apocrypha, The Death Knight, a LitRPG by J.M. Foley, a.k.a. Arty. Chapter 5, Handle with Care. I woke to the scent of roasted peppers and something sweet, maybe onions, already sizzling in a pan. Sunlight filtered in through the cracks in the shutters, warm and gold, and for the first time since waking up in this world, I didn't feel like death. My back didn't ache, my head wasn't spinning, I felt rested. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Light, melodic. Ella. Then Cass's voice followed, half muttered and teasing, something about burning the eggs again, and I heard a soft, "Shut up," from her in return. I sat up slowly, blinking the sleep from my eyes. The cot creaked under me, but it had done its job. Simple and rough, but leagues better than cold stone or damp leaves. When I opened the door to the main room, the warmth hit me like a welcome blanket. Cass was leaning against the counter in a loose tunic, hair still messy, while Ella stood at the stove with a wooden spatula in one hand and a mug in the other. She looked up when she saw me. "Good morning," she said, then, without asking, offered the mug. I took it, still a little groggy and not yet sure what was inside. The smell alone could have brought me back from the dead. Strong, bitter, and just a little smoky. "Holy shit, you guys have coffee? Thank God." Cass blinked. "Holy shit? Also, which god?" Never mind. Idiom. "Okay," he said slowly, then added, "I hope it's not the god of bad metaphors." Ella hid a smirk behind her cup. Cass stretched with a groan. "Fred's already out back. Wanted to let you sleep in a bit. Said to come find him once you're up and caffeinated. I'll help out after breakfast." I nodded, took a sip of coffee, and let it burn pleasantly down my throat. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. Ella gestured toward the table with her chin. "We'll call you when food's ready." "Right, I'll try to not look useless until then." Cass grinned and gave me a lazy salute as I stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, cooler than I expected. Sunlight filtered through the pine canopy, scattering golden spears across the packed dirt path. I spotted Fred near the wagon, sleeves rolled and already mid-haul. A stack of crates, rough, uneven, and far too numerous, waited beside him like a test I hadn't studied for. "Sleep well?" he called, not looking up as he shifted a barrel onto the back of the cart like it weighed nothing. "Pretty good, actually." Fred grunted. "Good, you'll need the energy." I joined him at the pile, eyeing the crates. Most were marked with simple symbols, bottle icons, flour sacks, and the occasional skull I chose not to ask about. He handed me a smaller one, then watched. "Let's see what you've got." It wasn't light, but not impossible. I braced my back, gripped the sides, and lifted it. It shifted slightly in my arms, and I corrected. Ding! Shipping skill gained. Shipping, level 1. You now understand the basics of loading, securing, and organizing cargo. Don't throw your back out. Sub-skills unlocked. Lifting, level 1. Basic packing, level 1. Progress to level 2, 20%. I blinked. Fred raised an eyebrow. "Unlock your shipping skill?" "Yeah, it seems so, and it's already 20% to level 2, I replied. He snorted. "Figures. First-hand levels go by fast. It's the system's way of making you feel accomplished before the real grind kicks in." I unlocked lifting, too. Does that feel insulting to you? "Only if you unlock breathing next." I chuckled under my breath and followed his lead, stepping up to the wooden ramp and placing the crate in the corner of the wagon. Fred gestured toward the others. "We've got to get this lot to Rivermeet by next week. Once they're packed, we tie them down so they don't go flying off when the road decides to turn into a drunken snake." Fred spat onto the ground. "We'll probably head out day after tomorrow. Path to Rivermeet's known for gobbies, so we'll get you trained up. At least enough so you don't poke your own eye out." I nodded, brushing off my hands. "I assume you mean with a sword?" "I'd say wait, but that ship's already sunk." Before I could fire back, he pointed toward another stack of crates off to the side. "We'll get the rest loaded up, and then start your training. Should be about another hour's work, the two of us." The thought of swinging a sword sent a strange flicker through my chest. Half excitement, half dread. I shoved it down and turned to grab the next crate when the cabin door creaked open behind us. Ella stepped out, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. Her obsidian hair shimmered in the morning light. "Breakfast is ready," she called out. Fred grunted. "I guess the crates can wait. Best not to work on an empty stomach. Nearly lost a finger doing that once." I raised an eyebrow. "From hunger?" Fred smirked. "No, tried lifting a barrel with one hand, eating with the other. Barrel won." He stretched his back with a wince and turned toward the house. "Come on then. Let's fill up before we test whether you're left or right-handed." As we walked, Ella lingered by the path, waiting. She gave a small, hopeful smile. "Was it hard? The work, I mean?" I shook my head. Not too bad. Either I'm strong or the crates are just being polite." That earned a soft laugh. "You didn't look tired." I smiled, feeling cocky. "You watching me?" Her cheeks flushed. No, I mean..." She spun on her heels and hurried inside. Fred watched her go, then raised an eyebrow at me. "She's quiet," he said, "but not blind." I choked on a laugh as we stepped through the door. The smell of warm bread and spiced eggs hit me the moment I stepped inside. Cass was already seated, lazily reaching for a jar of jam like it owed him money. Ella had retreated to the far end of the table, her face still faintly pink as she adjusted the plates. Fred dropped into his chair with a grunt and motioned for me to do the same. "Dig in. You'll need the energy if we're going to teach you how not to die with a sword in your hands." Fred pointed a fork at me. "You ever been to river, mate?" I shook my head. "Not that I remember." He nodded. "Small river city southeast of here. Sits right where the Vale run and the Dusquash meet. Fast, clear water from the north meets the slow, murky runoff from the marshlands. The folks that named it weren't exactly poets." Cass raised his mug. "Two creative cartographers." Fred smirked. "Town's grown a fair bit, though. Proper docks, warehouses, system terminals, a few decent taverns. Good stop for trade if you don't mind the smell of wet rope and pipe smoke." Ella spoke softly, not quite looking up. "They have a library?" Fred chuckled. "That too. Not a big one, but real books. Not just system scrolls. She's sweet on it." I paused, toast halfway to my mouth. "System scrolls?" Ella looked up, a little surprised I didn't know. "They're summoned text. A caster can connect to the source and request factual information, like history, locations, recipes, things like that." Fred snorted. "Fancy name for magically generated pamphlets." Ella continued, more softly now. "They're accurate, clean, but they're written by the system. No voice, no soul, just facts." "There's a whole shelf on pre-source history," Ella added, eyes warming. "Handwritten journals, poetry, even a few things translated from the old tongue." Cass leaned in. She tried to sneak home an atlas from last trip. That thing was half her body weight. Ella didn't even blink. It was worth it. Fred leaned back in his chair and waved his fork like a pointer. "River may also have a few schools. Basic ones for all the combat schools, but only a couple of guild halls. They've got some for tradecraft as well, like shipping and mercantilism. Fancy word for selling." I nodded slowly. "Right, you mentioned schools before, so how does that actually work? You pick one and get a class?" Fred shook his head. "You pick two. Primary and secondary. Your class comes from the combo. Take martialism and elementalism, and maybe the system will make you a battle mage. Swap elementalism for divinism. Could be a paladin instead." Ella glanced up briefly, then spoke just above a whisper. "I'm planning to take occultism first, elementalism second." Fred grunted. "Her combo will land her in the witch class. You'll see the glow behind her eyes before you see the fireball." Cass grinned. "Which means if she ever sets the house on fire, we're calling it academic progress. Since right now she can barely warm tea without boiling the whole pot." Ella didn't look up. "I could always start with you." Cass suddenly became very interested in his eggs. I smirked, then turned toward Ella. "So, why take elementalism if you're not good at fire magic?" Ella blinked at me, caught off guard maybe, but didn't shy away. Fred answered for her. "Because she doesn't need it." He leaned forward and continued to gesture with his fork. Elementalism covers 3 domains: water, fire, and lightning. Oh, that's right. Ella mentioned she was pretty good at water magic. I looked at her with a smile. Fred huffed. Pretty good doesn't do her talent justice. Most folk who study it struggle to master even one. Ella, she was bending water before she could read. Cass nodded. Fred nearly dropped his teeth when she split a rain barrel in half. I was holding a hammer at the time, Fred muttered. Could have been worse. I blinked, surprised. I looked at her again, and I really looked this time. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. No smug smile, no proud tilt of the chin, just quiet, calm, and the faintest pink in her cheeks. That's impressive, I said. Ella gave a small shrug, eyes fixed on her tea. I like the way it moves, that's all. I looked back at Fred. So, why not just stick to water magic? Why not specialize? Because the system doesn't let you just pick one element, he said. You take elementalism, you get the whole set, whether you like it or not. Cass added, though most people end up favoring one, the system still tracks your affinities and skills. She's just way ahead on the water track. And fire? I asked. Ella hesitated. I can light candles. Cass stage whispered, sometimes. Fred smirked. Lightning's the rarest to manifest. Needs a precise touch. That's why some folks go to naturalism instead. It overlaps with water and lightning, but in a more passive way. Less blast of power, more call the storm. I frowned. So it's like elemental magic, but softer? Closer to environmental magic, Fred said. Naturism's about harmony, encouraging growth, shaping what's already there. You don't command lightning with naturalism. You lure it. Ella nodded slowly. Someone once said, elementalism makes the world listen to you. Naturism listens back. Her voice was quiet, but the words stuck with me. It's something I'd have to start thinking about soon. What class I'd take, what path the system would give me once I choose my schools. Was it a permanent choice? Hey, Fred, I asked, glancing up from my plate. Is school selection permanent? Fred scratched his beard. Not quite, but it ain't something you switch mid-fight neither. Cass chimed in, still chewing. You can reassign your schools at the registrar. Costs a bit of coin. Time too. Fred nodded. You lose access to the class that came from your old pair. Talent tree locks up. Skills you already learned still stick, but they won't grow without the class active. So I could go martialism and elementalism, be a battle mage, then switch to martialism and divinism and become a paladin? Exactly, Fred said. But you'd be starting that second combo from scratch. Ella added softly. Most people stick with what they choose. The more time you spend in a class, the deeper the system binds to it. There are exceptions, though, Cass said. Legends. Folks who have mastered multiple class trees over time. They are rare, but they exist. Fred grunted. Usually gray-haired and missing at least one limb. I leaned back, letting it sink in. Swapping was possible, but it came at a cost. Fred drained the last of his tea with a satisfied sigh, then let out a thunderous belch that nearly rattled the table. Ella didn't flinch. Cass applauded. Elegant, I said, raising an eyebrow. It means thank you in Dwarven, Cass replied while Fred patted his stomach. Now, we've got a bit more holing to do before I start beating some technique into that head of yours, said Fred. I stood and started gathering the plates. Least I can do is help clean up. Cass waved me off from his seat, already kicking his feet up. Nah, don't worry about it. You're on crate duty and swordplay today. Leave the dishes to the magically inclined. Ella gave him a flat look as she reached for a sponge. I hesitated a beat longer, but Ella gave me a tiny nod as if to say, go on, it's fine. Fred was already halfway to the door. Come on, lad. Let's see what you're made of. I followed him out, heart already picking up the pace. Breakfast was over. Time to earn my class. The morning air outside had warmed, but only slightly. The grass was still damp beneath my boots as I followed Fred back to the wagon. We didn't say much as we worked, just the scrape of wood on wood, the occasional grunt, and Fred's muttered curses when a rope didn't sit right. By the time the last crate was loaded and strapped down, my shirt clung to my back and the sun was crawling higher up in the sky. Fred wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "Not bad, lad. Now, let's see if you can swing something heavier than a box." He took me to a packed dirt clearing behind the house. A few dummies stood skewered in the earth, rough-hewn, patched with hay, and bearing enough stab marks to make their ancestors wince. Fred grabbed 2 wooden training swords from a rack leaning against the fence. He tossed one to me without warning. It smacked into my chest with a hollow thunk. I barely caught it before it hit the ground. "Step 1, Fred said, grinning. "Hold on to it." I narrowed my eyes and gripped the hilt. It felt weird, heavier than I expected, unbalanced. Not at all like the swords I'd remember using in virtual reality. "You said you wanted a sword," Fred continued, circling around me. "So we're starting with the basics. Footwork, guard, swings, and how not to stab yourself in the thigh." Reassuring. He didn't respond, just pointed at a marked spot in the dirt. "Stand there, square your feet." I did. "Now when I come at you, don't try to fight back, just block. Keep your eyes open and your weight centered." I barely had time to nod before Fred lunged. Wood clacked hard against my sword. The impact jolted up my arms and I stumbled back a step. "Too slow. Reset." I moved back into position. This time, I braced for it. He came in again, faster, and I managed to deflect the hit, but my grip slipped. Fred spun and tapped me on the shoulder with the tip of his sword. "Dead," he said. "I blocked that." "You blocked the first swing. A fight ain't one swing." We went again, and again, and again. Sometimes I blocked, sometimes I didn't. More often than not, Fred knocked me off balance, or tagged me with the flat of his sword, or swept my leg and sent me sprawling to the dirt. The first time he floored me, I hit hard. A soft chime rang in my ears, more felt than heard, and a faint red bar flickered into the corner of my vision. My health. It had dipped. Barely, but it was there. Below it, a thinner yellow bar pulsed steadily downward. Stamina, already halfway gone. I guess the system was really committed to the whole video game aesthetic. "What the hell?" I muttered. "Something wrong, lad?" he asked, concerned. "Nothing," I said, brushing dirt off my shirt. I didn't want to let him know I'd never seen the bars before. Didn't want to admit I didn't even know they existed until just now. By the 5th knockdown, I just lay there, panting. Fred offered me a hand. "You're terrible," he said cheerfully, "but you learn fast." I took his hand, gritting my teeth as he hauled me up. My arms were burning, my back ached, but something in me felt alive. Let's go again," I said. Fred grinned. "Now that's the spirit." We reset. I tried to remember what he said. Center my weight, keep my guard up, eyes open. Still, something about the sword felt off. Not the weapon itself. Me, like I was forcing it. Fred must have noticed. After our next clash, when he knocked the sword from my hands with a sharp smack, he frowned and tilted his head. "You ever fight with a shield?" "I don't think so." "Feels like your balance is off, like you're waiting on something in your offhand that ain't there." He crossed his arms. "Close your eyes for a sec." I raised an eyebrow, but did as he said. "Picture yourself fighting," Fred said. "Not here, not with me, just what feels right." A memory surfaced, not a real one. A glowing greatsword, digital wind, a health bar pulsing red, my fingers tightening on a controller, rolling through an enemy's swing, bringing the blade down in a heavy arc. 2 hands, always 2 hands. I opened my eyes. I think I've always used 2-handers. Fred nodded like that explained everything. "Now we're talking." He walked over to the training rack and hefted a longer wooden blade. It was heavier, thicker. A simplified greatsword meant for 2 hands. He tossed it to me. "Try that." The weight settled into my grip like it belonged there. My stance shifted automatically. I didn't even have to think about it. Fred watched me for a minute, then gave a satisfied grunt. "Much better. You've got the strength to make it work, surprisingly so for level 1. I gave the sword a slow, testing swing. It felt good, like remembering something my body hadn't realized it knew. "All right," Fred said, stepping back into position with a grin. Let's see if big blades make you any harder to knock on your ass. Fred came at me again, but this time something clicked. The sword no longer felt like a lead pipe taped to my hands. I planted my feet, shifted my weight, and caught his swing with the flat of mine. It rattled my bones, but I held firm. He didn't stop. Another jab, then a feint. I deflected one, dodged the other, and for once, pushed back. My blade swept up in a wide arc. It wasn't clean, but it was mine. A proper swing. Fred parried with ease and, in the same motion, hooked my ankle with his foot and dropped me straight on my ass. I hit the dirt with a grunt, coughing. Ding! You have unlocked a new school. Martialism, Level 1. Martialism governs the disciplines of physical combat, weapon mastery, and battlefield presence. Subschool unlocked, Melee, Level 1. Melee focuses on close-range weapons such as swords, axes, and polearms. Precision, strength, and timing are at its core. New passive skill learned, Swordsmanship, Level 1. You have begun to understand the basics of swordplay, stance, grip, guard, and follow-through. You still look like a drunk scarecrow, but the blade listens, barely. New passive skill learned, Two-handed weapons, Level 1. You have chosen violence with both hands. Big, heavy, and built to cleave through regrets and rib cages. Two-handed weapons trade speed for power. Progress to swordsmanship level 2, 35%. Primary scaling, strength, vitality. Progress to martialism level 2, 10%. Progress to melee level 2, 20%. Progress to swordsmanship level 2, 35%. Progress to two-handed weapons level 2, 25%. Fred loomed over me, grinning like a proud father. Aye, that swing didn't land, but it made you harder to knock over. He offered his hand, I took it, and he hauled me to my feet. I shook out my arms, catching my breath. I think the system just gave me something for this. Fred raised an eyebrow. Oh? Yeah, I smiled faintly. Martialism and swordsmanship under it, apparently. Fred let out a whistle. Already, huh? She didn't waste time with naturals. I wouldn't go that far, I muttered, adjusting my grip on the wooden blade. Pretty sure I've kissed dirt more times than I've swung the sword. Fred barked a laugh. And that's how you know it's working. Again? I asked, already bracing for it. Aye, lad. Again.
Thank you for listening. If you want to read ahead, you can find the link to my book on Royal Road in the video description. If you're enjoying the story, please feel free to leave a comment and tell me your thoughts. If you like my way of storytelling, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be writing and uploading more chapters and stories soon. Thank you so much for listening.